Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords.
There have been many stories on climate change and the effect it might have on our planet. You might have heard this word in one of those stories.
Irreversible.
Rising temperatures will bring more extreme weather, food and water shortages, and irreversible changes to ecosystems that result in coral death, forest loss, and species extinction.
Irreversible means that something that has changed cannot be corrected. Our story talks about the harmful effects climate change, also known as global warming, might have in our world.
If there is irreversible damage to the environment, it cannot be fixed.
Now, when you hear the word irreversible, you will know what this newsword means.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords, where we teach you about words in the news. Listen to this news story about an immigration reform bill being considered by the U.S. Senate.
So we are very pleased to see that the bipartisan legislation also includes many measures and the resources necessary to achieve the successful integration of immigrants into American society.
Legislation is a word you often hear when people talk about politics. It is a law that is passed by a legislative body, like the U.S. Congress.
Sometimes there is intense debate before legislation becomes a law. Now, when you hear the word legislation, you will know what this newsword means.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords.
You might hear this word in a story about crime in troubled towns.
Looting.
The unarmed teenager was shot here by a white police officer, sparking violent protests, looting, and vandalism. Now, this is a gathering site for a community determined to quell the unrest and find justice.
Looting. Looting means to steal. It is against the law.
Looting usually happens during riots, when police do not have control of a crowd. When people break into stores taking goods both big and small, they are looting.
So the next time you hear the word looting, your American English will be good enough to know what this newsword means.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords, where we teach you about words you hear in the news. Here is a word used by politician Terry McAuliffe when he ran for governor of the U.S. state of Virginia.
We're also proud that our ticket is in the mainstream of Virginia. And in this mainstream ticket, we are laser focused on the issues that matter to most Virginians.
Mainstream means the thoughts, beliefs, or choices that are accepted by the largest number of people. It is a word you might hear in stories about American politics or culture.
Now, when you hear the word mainstream,
you will know what this newsword means.
To learn more news words, visit our website, learningenglish.voanews.com.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords.
This word describes a terrible disease.
Malaria.
We used to see a lot of malaria in Wankpa Clinic, but now with efforts of elimination and active surveillance, and even the setting up of malaria posts on the other side of the border, the malaria rates have really gone down.
Malaria. Malaria is an infectious disease that can be deadly.
An infected person has fever and chills. Malaria is found in hot and wet climates. It is spread by mosquitoes and can be prevented with medicine.
Now, when you hear the word malaria, you will know what this news word means.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords, where we teach you about words in the news. Here is a word that has to do with ships, the sea, and often the military.
Maritime.
The U.S. Defense Secretary will travel from Hawaii to Japan, which has its own maritime dispute with Beijing.
The word maritime has a connection to the seas or oceans. In our story, the maritime dispute is about the argument between Japan and China over control of the Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea.
You will also hear maritime used in business stories about shipping and transportation on the water.
Now, when you hear the word maritime,
your American English will be good enough to know what this news word means.
welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords.
This is from a story about people who go from one place to another.
Migrants.
Mild weather in Europe has so far contributed to the continuing high numbers of migrants arriving in Europe via the Mediterranean. But with harsh winter conditions expected soon in the region, the suffering of the thousands of migrants traveling through the Balkans is likely to worsen.
Migrants describes people who go from one place to another. They often migrate to find work.
Migrants also flee violence in their country for a safer one.
Now, when you hear the word migrants, you will know what this newsword means.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords, where we teach you about words in the news.
Owning a home in the United States often is called the American dream. And when Americans talk about buying a home, they usually use this word:
mortgage. And while mortgage rates have risen, home buyers can take heart. They're still historically low.
Unless people pay cash for a house, they usually establish a mortgage and make regular payments on the property.
Each month, they give a bank or the property owner a set amount of money until the loan is paid. Most Americans have 30-year mortgages on their homes.
Now, when you hear the word mortgage, your English will be good enough to know what this newsword means.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords. Here is a word that has to do with art and sometimes history too.
Museum.
National Gallery of Art Associate Curator Charles Brock says another goal is to encourage people to visit museums.
Museums, of course, are dedicated to preserving culture for future generations, and so we have to make sure that those future generations are interested.
A museum is a building where interesting and beautiful things are kept. The objects are put out for the public to see. Museums can be about art, culture, or history. They can be privately owned or operated by a government.
Now, the next time you hear the word museums, you will know what this news word means.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords.
Together, these two words have a military meaning.
National Guard.
The National Guard is often activated to assist the U.S. military overseas. But most of the time, its members are citizens protecting other citizens after natural or man-made disasters.
The National Guard is America's oldest military force. They are deployed at home and overseas.
Each of the 50 states has its own guard. A governor or the federal government can activate the Guard to help with natural disasters. They can also help local police restore order during riots.
Now, when you hear the words National Guard, you will know what these news words mean.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords. This word is 4 words combined into one. Listen to see whether you know the word.
NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen said he envisions no NATO role in any potential military action beyond defense of Turkey.
NATO. It stands for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It is a political and military alliance of European countries and the United States.
NATO was established in 1949 to protect Western Europe against possible attack by the Soviet Union.
Today, NATO has 28 member countries. Now, when you hear the word NATO, you will know what it means.
Welcome to the Voice of America's News Words. This word has to do with health care in the United States.
John Boehner, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, does not like President Barack Obama's health care reforms.
Why did the president mislead the American people when he promised they could keep their health care plan? Why is Obamacare forcing Americans to lose access to the doctors they like?
The Affordable Care Act, often called Obamacare, is the president's program to provide health care for Americans.
Despite early problems with the program's website, the White House hopes that many Americans will use Obamacare to get health care.
Now, when you hear the word Obamacare, you will know what this news word means.